It's certainly not a surrender deal. I can't see that at all. Is it good for Britain? It might have been much, much better for Britain if it had gone further and if it had gone faster.
This weekend on BBC Politics North, something quite remarkable happened. A Conservative spokesperson, Lord Kirkhope of Harrogate, a former MEP, broke the line with the party leader and made it clear that he approves of Keir Starmer's Brexit reset deal. Now, this could be a sign that Kemi Badenoch has lost all control, and it could be a sign of growing confidence within the Conservatives of the pro-EU wing, who've been largely silent since Boris Johnson took office as leader in 2019. We can all dream, but for the time being, enjoy his contributions.
He's not going to agree with me, but of course, when we left the European Union, also we lost an awful lot of nurses from Europe. And I think that was one of the bad things, although there are many involved with that.
We are going to talk about Europe now. We're going to talk about that new deal that was signed by Sir Keir Starmer to reset relations with Europe. Now, is it going to mean cheaper food, smoother trade and fewer queues at passport control, as the government promises? Or is it a betrayal of Brexit that surrenders powers to the EU? So let's ask my guests. I'm going to come to you first again, Julie. You told the Prime Minister this week in PMQs that the deal was good news for biscuits. Now, we're, of course, talking about a famous firm in your constituency.
Indeed, yes.
But is it going to bring wider jobs, investment to Cumbria?
Well, those are the Prime Minister's words. He said it was good news for biscuits, good news for business. I'd also add it's good news for Britain as well. We're not interested in fighting the same old battles that we were fighting 9 years ago. It's about looking at the future. We're in a position, this is 1 out of 3 deals that we've been able to get over the line. It's about improving our ability to trade with our nearest neighbours, making it easier, cutting that red tape, cutting the bureaucracy, making sure that companies like cars can trade profitably with our nearest European neighbours and getting the goods in that they need in order to produce our famous table water, etc. But it is, as you say, this summer it'll be great news. You can get through e-gates again.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, definitely. And the other thing it's really great news for, and so important, is on defence. We live in a very, very uncertain world. We need that closer tie with our nearest European neighbours. I think it's fantastic news for Britain, fantastic news for biscuits and fantastic news for business.
OK, Lord Kirkhope, your party says this is a step backwards. They've said we've surrendered to the EU. You're a former Euro MP. Are you actually in favour of this closer tie?
Look, I spent 17 years of my long political career leading a group or involved in a group in the European Parliament, and I'm pro-European, and I'm pleased to say that my party is sufficiently flexible, not quite as dogmatic as Andrew's, but we allow, I think, views which are not always the same, and my view is quite strongly that this is this is a positive move, but it's not sufficient. And I think also...
You don't agree with your leader, then?
I don't agree about some of the things that have been said by my leader and others on this particular theme, because I think that, by and large, yes, Brexit took place, people made a decision, I'm not arguing about that, but I am saying that it would be madness in the world in which we now live, with all the pressures all over the place, new international pressures, that we do not make the very best of the relationship with our biggest market and our closest neighbours.
OK. Andrew Husband, Reform have also been very critical of this deal. If, though, it does mean, we're going to get cheaper food, we're not going to have these massive queues at the airports, it's going to be better for businesses, then surely that's a good thing.
I don't think people are reading the room.
Do you not?
No, I don't. I think, look at it from a big picture. So we've got only 41% of our exports go to the EU, so there's 59% go elsewhere. The North East in itself, it's 50% exports, go to the States, etc., etc. Now, we've already had a trade deal with the EU. We've already got a trade deal with the EU, point number 1. Point number 2, we're looking at realigning with the European Court of Justice. So all of a sudden, all these freedoms and etc., etc. And that, we'd have to actually pay for that.
I'm sorry, that is not what this trade deal is about. What I think it's really good news for
Can I just finish, please? Because this is absolutely why
we'll
we're
let
here.
Julie have a say. Julie?
Yeah, I was going to say, that's not what this trade deal covers at all. What it does cover is about opening up access to the European Defence Fund, which will be fantastic news for businesses here in the North East, including those in the Durham area. So I'm really sorry that Reform thinks easing bureaucracy and cutting red tape is a bad thing for local businesses.
It's the cost of realigning our laws with the European Court of Justice.
That's not what we're doing.
It's losing sovereignty, but more importantly, you talk about military budgets and military funds contributing to that when we're already a sovereign country, we can do that ourselves. I think more importantly, it's more regulation with British farmers having to be monitored and inspected now by, again, it is.
No, it actually eases it, Andrew. I think you need to read the deal.
Absolutely not. Well, time will tell, but at the end of the day, what we've done is we've betrayed what the majority of people voted for in the UK, and it will come back to...
Lord Kirkhope, are we just going back over old ground? Do we need to stop?
Yeah, look, I mean, this is interesting, all this argument, but the fact of the matter is there are certain facts. Okay, and that is one of the facts is that we have lost about £100 billion in our economy because we left the European Union. It is a massive market that we cannot ignore. We're going to give new opportunities, whether it's through the present proposals or I hope some further proposals, to our exporters, our farmers, everybody to actually take full advantage of the marketplace. That's really more important. And you talk about jobs on this programme, young people and so on. Where's the future? Yeah. Where's the future?
So, it's about the future.
The future is there. It's not anywhere else in the world. Yes, you can develop other markets. No one's stopping you. The Europeans have never stopped us doing that. But why don't we make friends again?
Let's hear from Andrew.
The point is we had a trade deal. We've got a trade deal already. This, in fact, is going to produce a 0.2% GDP increase until 2040. We already have a trade deal. It sounds like we've given away quite a lot to go through the airport a little bit quicker. That's the top and bottom of it. Difference of opinion, I think.
Let's talk about the fishermen, though, because, I mean, it does feel like they got a bit of a raw deal there.
Again, that's just not correct.
No.
It's exactly the same Brexit freedoms deal that the last Conservative government negotiated. There hasn't been a change. This is about actually future-proofing it.
That is quite correct, by the way. The fishermen can now export their fish to Europe without any objections or tariffs or anything. They've never been able to do that.
Yeah, everyone agrees other than Reform.
So, imagine you're going to have Boris's fishing deal, 2026, huge new quotas for British fishermen who've been preparing, increasing the fleets to take advantage of this increased quota next year. That's not going to happen anymore, is it? What you've got now is an ageing population in the fishing industry, especially in the northeast of England, who now are going to see a further 12 years of, well, let's face it, massive competition in the British waters. That is not going to encourage new fishermen to come through. In fact, what will happen, you'll see a wipeout of the British fishing industry in the next 12 years unless there's a change of government in 4 years' time.
It's ridiculous. Lobsters on every table, every restaurant table in Paris and Brussels now will not cost as much and will be sold in greater numbers. Our inshore fishermen all around Yorkshire, for instance, are really going to benefit here from this deal. Even though I'm reluctant to give too much to the government, but this deal is a good start.
Tell that to the fishermen who are planning to increase the hauls next year.
No. The fishermen
I get a feeling we could talk about this for another half hour, but I'm afraid we have.
I think what the data would show is that the British people have moved on from Brexit. When you ask them, is Brexit a good thing or a bad thing? More people think it's a bad thing than think it's a good thing. When you ask people, should we go back into the European Union? More people say we should go back in than we shouldn't go back in. But when you say, how about having a debate about Brexit again? How about having another referendum? People run a mile. They don't want to go anywhere near that. And clearly, Keir Starmer is very aware of that because he has framed this entirely as forward-looking. I want to deliver greater growth. I want to have a closer relationship with our near trading partners.
With that in mind, did Keir Starmer do enough to roll the pitch, to prepare people for the fact that this agreement involves trade-offs?
In an ideal world, I'm sure Keir Starmer might have liked to have done a little bit more to explain this to people. But there's two reasons why that may not have happened. One is it was a live negotiation.
Is it a surrender deal or is it something that is good for Britain?
It's certainly not a surrender deal. I can't see that at all. Is it good for Britain? It might have been much, much better for Britain if it had gone further and if it had gone faster. And I particularly think of the three areas I have been so concerned with over the years. Obviously, the European Union is one of them, but within that wider context is working together on climate change, environmental issues as a whole, biodiversity, and also the whole question of pollution, marine pollution in particular, plastic pollution. I cannot see that on these fundamentally important issues You're in the Labour Party, you're in the party of government. I want to hear you say that we should have done more in this agreement on environmental issues.
It's a start. I think we can go further.
Would you like to see more?
And there will be annual monitoring, as you say.
I would like to see them move as close as they possibly can while respecting, yes, they're not going to be back in the single market as such.
We haven't had a single market deal. We haven't had a customs union one. It was in the manifesto that we weren't.
And you think we'll stick to that this Parliament?
I do, yeah. But we're smoothing out some of the awful rough edges of the terrible Brexit deal that the last government left behind, which I wish we'd never gone there. But even I, as a Democrat, respect.
Rupert Hook?